Welcome to the NWI.com Political Roundtable for Friday, February 7th. I'm Robert Blaskowitz, Assistant Managing Editor of The Times. Joined with me today, Doug Ross, Editorial Page Editor of The Times, and Times Assistant Managing Editor Krista Ivanovic. Let's jump right in with the news of the day, which I think there's going to be an announcement probably here momentarily as we're taping this. The RDA is expected to announce that they will be providing $8 million annually to the cause of South Shore expansion. So the question is, what does this mean for the cause, and what more can be done to get the rest of the money, which I think is $20 million annually they're looking for?
Well, 16 million,
16 million.
For debt service. And here's how it shakes out. The county is already committing $2 million for it. The RDA is committing $8 million for it. Munster is committed 200 and
some thousand,
yeah,
48
exactly.
or something, yes.
You know, round it to whatever you want. So the idea is, if all the communities in Lake County, they've got this new economic development income tax, if they all chip in 34% of their economic development income tax, keeping in mind there were several income taxes enacted all at the same time that brought it up to the 1.5%. But if they chip in that 34% of this one particular tax and commit it for the next, I think through for 33 years, as I recall, 2015 through 2048, then that gives the amount that repays the bonds to finance the local share of the construction of the South Shore extension to Dyer. And then you get that built, and then of course the federal government's paying the other half of the $571 million total for the project. So
and
if
who
you
knows
get,
when that'll come around again in this climate, as U.S. Rep. Pepys Clark has pointed out.
I mean,
Right.
frankly, there's more and more competition for those dollars, and if that program does continue, then the federal share has declined. As these get more and more competitive. So this is really the last year to get that 50-50
Which
match.
is why you have the urgent push right now by Representative Visklaski. What about the State House, Krista? Is there any hope at all of getting anything out of the state?
Well, it's not
for
that
this
there's
cause?
it's not that there's hope or not. The problem is this is not a budget year. Perhaps this sense of urgency and all of this should have been done last year. Maybe it was tried and they just couldn't get it together. But this year is not a budget year. And Tim Brown, who's chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, apparently has a box that's wrapped on his desk that says the budget. And he said, do not open until 2015-16. And he has said he is not opening that budget for anything or anyone. So no matter what our delegation would want to do, they can't open up that budget. So there's no way to get any money right now that we know of. I know that there's about $4 million that's been bandied about. That is a one-time deal from the loophole that happened with Lake County tax. There's a tax
Is
break.
that a one-time or an annual?
I thought it was just the $4 million as a one-time because they've closed the loophole, so it's not going to happen again. And I think that some people wanted to take that $4 million and give it directly to the RDA for the South Shore. But I don't know where we are with that or what's happening with that, because I know some of the cities feel like they deserve that back into their own budgets.
Right.
Well, here's the other scenario with that $4 million is you allow that $4 million to be an annual amount and it goes to the RDA, and then if you do that, then over time you develop that $4 million, accumulates until
But
you
there's
get,
nowhere that you're going to get that $4 million unless you
continue that tax the way it is. See, that
Right.
becomes an annual
Right.
tithe to the RDA, and then that accumulates, and then because that accumulates, then you get that toward the operating cost, because you're going to have to operate the trains
Right.
once you build them. So then that adds up too. So there's
It
potential
seems
there
like
as well.
it's still an uphill climb
Yes.
to get this done, certainly.
We're-
It is, but
worthwhile
it's
in some
getting
people's
a heck of a lot
minds.
closer.
Yeah, yeah. And segueing, this is a segue with talking about state and the budget and revenues. I'll segue into our next topic, which is state revenues, which we're seeing now are going to be really impacted by the current weather problems that they've had a real poor effect on state revenues, whether it's sales tax, and particularly casino revenues.
Right.
People aren't going, you know what, if it's If the roads are horrible, why are you going to go out to a casino? So-
Right. What has been harmed, not just casino revenues for that very reason, but sales tax and personal income tax are down for January. And the concern is that February is going to be just as cold and ugly, so we could have us missing our revenue targets, not just for January, but for February, for March, into April, which is pretty scary. Not only did we miss our expectations, the forecast, by 2%, but we are down 6.5% from January
And-
2013.
And
it's
state
basically
revenues
the
had been
weather.
fairly poor before any
Right.
of this hit anyway.
Right.
So this is just compounding
Right.
that.
Right.
And the
6%
question,
is a lot.
yeah. So the question, Doug, now is where this leaves the Governor Pence's desire for this property tax reform to eventually eliminate personal property tax for businesses.
I think it leaves them looking for a paddle up that creek, because, I mean, how are you going to, if the state's, picture the revenue as a pool of water, and you got a hole in the pool, you got real trouble trying to eliminate one of those taxes, because, that money's got to come from somewhere. And he wants to do it without unduly burdening, as I recall, were his exact words, local government. Well,
And local taxpayers.
so somebody's got to pay for it. So if you're relieving tax burden on businesses, and you don't unduly burden either local government that currently receives that $1 billion a year from this statewide.
Continue your pool
Yeah.
metaphor. Who gets soaked?
Yeah,
Right.
somebody is somebody's going to
Right.
get dunked, and
Yeah.
and you can't do it and meet those goals.
And compounding it is the tax caps. The Indiana Fiscal Policy Institute just came out with a report yesterday that talked about, it used to be easier to put the burden on taxpayers, but now that we have tax caps in the state constitution, it's not so easy, even if the governor or someone wanted to put it on local governments, and local governments, I mean, I think all that's left is the income tax, the local option income tax.
Well, and here's where it gets tricky. Where you're talking about the tax caps and stuff, is keep in mind that 29% of the total personal property tax revenue statewide, 29% comes from 4 counties: Lake, Allen, Marion, and Vanderburgh. So Evansville, Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, and of course Lake County. And so these are the counties that have those property tax caps in place. Lake County just enacted a huge income tax, so good luck with that. Well, if one of the options is, let's make this a county option to eliminate this tax, personal property tax. Well, what does that mean for Lake County? Well, that means how could you possibly eliminate $100 million of your revenue? Look at the steel mill. You have a huge pole barn basically with a lot of equipment in it. You remove the taxes from all of that equipment, and all you've got is a piece of ground with a lot of pole barns. So that's you're going to get very little tax out of those steel mills,
Right.
and that's the cash cow.
And the question is how many jobs, because the whole purpose of this is to create jobs, to lure business, create jobs. So and the real question is how many jobs are you going to bring here? We are already a pretty tax-friendly state.
Well,
when it
we're
comes to
considered,
business.
Right.
we're in the top 5, top 8 among every thing you look at as far as to lure businesses here.
Yeah.
And there are states that are eliminating this tax, but they're making it up in other ways. And in Indiana, we just
And they don't
we're
have the
constrained.
issues
haven't
we
figured
have.
that out.
Another stressor would be, you have more and more communities looking at raising taxes to pay for schools. So that
Well,
that
and
gets
the
out
state
from under
operates
the
the
tax
schools,
cap.
too.
Right,
So
exactly, yeah.
So you're
It's a shell
talking.
game.
Well, that and you're looking at if the schools are strapped for cash, for the local cash. Before you do buses, before you do any of those other things, the state pays for the operations, but other than like transportation. But before you do the buses, you're going to have to pay the debt, and there are a lot of school districts around here that have a lot of debt because Hammond, for example, built a bunch of new elementary schools, and then was strapped for cash, couldn't build a high school as a consequence when the tax caps came in and everything. So, these districts, you're going to see your children suffer if this goes into effect. I'm betting.
And let me remind, we are already diverting $60 million a year to private and religious schools with the voucher system. So now we've got this small pot that's being further dissected and parsed out.
So it all gets very complicated.
And before we end this week, wanted to touch on one more issue. Asian carp came up earlier this week with the federal government pushing a plan that would basically cut off the waterways, trying to cut off the connection between the Mississippi River basin and then the Great Lakes that would basically cut off the connection between the rivers, the waterways from south of Chicago into Lake Michigan. The complaint from our area, of course, is that this is going to really hurt us economically because we depend on those shipping routes.
Right. I mean, we have shipping. This is what we do here. I mean, this is our lifeblood is transportation, and if you cut off one aspect of transportation, say Klein Avenue or the Chicago area waterway system, you're going to really have a huge impact in the way goods are delivered. And I'm talking about not just getting product out to the customers, the final product, but I'm talking about getting raw materials in and all of this
exactly.
stuff. So what would this have? This would really hurt our area, but then Indianapolis and so forth has better access. So you could end up moving some of the operations that are happening here. You could move into other cities like Indianapolis, not necessarily there, but like Indianapolis that are focusing on ways to get to different ports and to
They
ship
recently
other
opened up
ways.
a facility down.
It's already happening. They're already making
Exactly.
plans to do that, to take away our
the governor said,
transportation.
we can go around Chicago and go
Right.
through Indianapolis.
And
And we're sitting here like, hey, we're part of the state too.
Right, he said,
Yeah.
Indiana's the crossroads, and he meant Indianapolis area.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so it has a huge impact for here. Now, admittedly, I would not want to go one-on-one with one of those fish.
Right.
This is not the hillbilly hand fishing TV show type of fish. This is a pretty serious kind, but cutting off commerce is a pretty serious business.
It's
too.
pretty serious. Maybe they can figure out a way to, make them, marketable for food, because that seems to be,
what were they for? Originally, exactly.
Yeah.
So, get a bunch of guys out there with spear guns and get her done.
Yeah.
Get her done.
Okay, well, that's all the time we have this week. Thank you for watching. We'll be back next week with another political roundtable.